$6,000. That's how much extra you paid for your last truck, and you never knew it. 6 companies shook hands in a Brussels hotel in 1997, and for 14 years, every truck sold in Europe carried a hidden surcharge. But the company that started the whole scheme never paid a single euro in fine. Every truck you see on a European highway, delivering food to your supermarket, medicine to your hospital, furniture to your home, 9 out of 10 of those trucks were built by just 6 manufacturers. And for 14 years, those 6 companies secretly agreed on what to charge you. Not in a boardroom with lawyers present, not through any legitimate process. In hotel backrooms, at industry trade fairs, over emails they assumed nobody would ever read. The people buying these trucks, thousands of small haulage firms, massive logistics companies, even city governments buying garbage trucks and fire engines, none of them had any idea that competition between these brands had quietly stopped existing. I explain cases like this every week. Subscribe to see the next one. Brussels, January 1997. Senior executives from 6 of Europe's largest truck makers walked into a hotel and sat down at the same table. They represented MAN from Munich, Daimler from Stuttgart, Volvo and Renault from Gothenburg, DAF from Eindhoven, Iveco from Turin, and Scania from Sweden. Between them, they controlled roughly 90% of every medium and heavy truck sold across the entire continent. That evening, they reached an agreement. They would coordinate their prices. Not the final price a buyer would negotiate at a dealership, but the starting number, the factory list price that serves as the foundation for every truck deal in the industry. You're all living. If all 6 manufacturers raised that starting number together at the same time by similar amounts, no buyer anywhere in Europe could shop around for a genuinely better offer. The illusion of competition would remain, but the substance of it would be gone. The scheme worked precisely because it was invisible to the people paying the bills. Over the 14 years the cartel operated, roughly 4.8 million medium and heavy trucks were sold across Europe with inflated price tags. Buyers still walked into dealerships, still haggled over discounts, still compared one brand against another, and believed they were getting the best possible price. But the floor beneath every negotiation had been raised before any conversation even began. Every discount a salesperson offered was calculated from a number that 6 supposed competitors had quietly agreed upon months earlier. You could negotiate all day and never reach a price that reflected genuine market competition. And then the cartel discovered a second way to extract money from its customers. Throughout the late 1990s and 2000s, new European environmental rules required progressively cleaner truck engines. These regulations were labeled Euro 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. Each generation demanded expensive engineering upgrades, new filters, new injection systems, new catalytic components. In a genuinely competitive market, manufacturers would race to develop these technologies at the lowest possible cost, trying to win customers by absorbing some of that expense or engineering cheaper solutions. But these 6 companies did the precise opposite. They met and agreed to pass every single cent of compliance cost directly onto buyers, all at the same time at nearly identical rates. No manufacturer would undercut another on emissions pricing. The customer bore the entire burden of cleaner air, with zero competitive pressure keeping that burden reasonable. For 7 years, from 1997 through 2004, the executives coordinated through in-person meetings. They gathered at trade fairs like the IAA Commercial Vehicle Show in Frankfurt, events specifically designed to showcase competition between truck brands. The irony is almost too perfect to believe. These executives stood on brightly lit stages presenting their newest trucks to cheering audiences, then slipped into back rooms at the same venue to fix the prices of those exact vehicles. They discussed upcoming price increases over dinners, confirmed timelines over phone calls, and synchronized their moves so that no buyer would notice the pattern. After 2004, the method evolved, but the crime continued without interruption. Instead of senior headquarters executives meeting face-to-face, the coordination shifted downward to German subsidiary managers. Emails replaced handshakes and conference calls replaced hotel lobbies, but the information exchanged remained identical: pricing data, timing of increases, and emissions cost schedules. The trail became digital rather than physical. The cartel became harder to detect from the outside, but internally it operated just as smoothly as it had since that first Brussels meeting. This arrangement might have continued for decades. Nobody on the outside suspected anything. But in September of 2010, something unexpected happened inside one of the 6 companies. MAN, a founding member of the cartel, a company that had been in that Brussels hotel room from the very first day, picked up the phone and called the European Commission's competition division. They filed a formal confession in exchange for immunity from punishment. MAN's legal team handed over internal documents, emails, pricing schedules, records of meetings stretching back over a decade, everything the investigators would need to prove the conspiracy existed. Why would a guilty company turn on its own partners and confess? Because European law rewards the first conspirator willing to talk. A man faced a potential fine of 1.2 billion euros based on their share of the illegal activity. By being the first to confess, they paid absolutely nothing. The calculation was brutally simple. Get caught eventually and lose billions, or betray your partners now and walk away free. That confession triggered the largest cartel investigation in European history. In January of 2011, Commission investigators launched simultaneous dawn raids across the continent. Teams of officials arrived completely unannounced at corporate headquarters in Munich, Stuttgart, Turin, Eindhoven, and Gothenburg before employees had even finished their morning coffee. They seized computer hard drives, copied email servers, photographed documents, and physically sealed filing cabinets and office doors to prevent anyone from destroying evidence. The raids lasted several days at each location, and the evidence they uncovered was overwhelming. The formal investigation took 5 years to complete. Then, in July of 2016, Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager stood at a podium in the Berlaymont building in Brussels and announced a record fine of 2.93 billion euros. She called the cartel unacceptable and noted that these companies should have been competing with each other instead of coordinating against their customers. 5 of the 6 companies had agreed to settle, admitting guilt in exchange for reduced penalties. Daimler paid just over 1 billion euros, the largest single share. DAF paid 752 million, Volvo and Renault together paid 670 million, Iveco paid 494 million, and MAN, the company whose confession made everything possible, paid exactly 0. But one company refused to accept the outcome. Scania rejected the settlement offer and chose to fight the charges in court, a gamble that would consume 7 years and accomplish nothing except delay. In September of 2017, the Commission issued a separate decision against Scania alone, imposing a fine of 880 million euros. Scania immediately appealed to the EU General Court in Luxembourg. In February of 2022, after nearly 5 years of litigation, the court rejected every single argument Scania raised and upheld the fine in full. Undeterred, Scania appealed one final time to the Court of Justice of the European Union, the highest court on the continent. In February of 2024, that court delivered the same definitive answer: guilty on all counts, fine confirmed, and no further appeal possible. The total punishment across all 6 companies reached 3.8 billion euros in regulatory fines alone. That number sounds enormous until you consider what comes next. The real financial reckoning arrived from the victims themselves. After the Commission's decision became final, every company, municipality, and individual operator who purchased trucks during those 14 years gained a binding legal right to sue for the overcharge they had unknowingly paid. Deutsche Bahn, Germany's national railway operator, filed claims worth hundreds of millions of euros. The UK Road Haulage Association launched a collective action on behalf of its members, covering more than 600,000 trucks purchased during the cartel period. Courts in the Netherlands, Spain, and Germany began processing thousands of individual lawsuits from fleet operators large and small. Litigation analysts now estimate that total damages exposure for the 6 manufacturers could reach 100 billion euros, and those cases continue working through courts across Europe today, with no global settlement in sight. More than 1,000 municipalities across Germany alone discovered they had overpaid for public vehicles, from waste collection trucks to fire engines, all purchased at cartel-inflated prices. The truck cartel reshaped European competition law permanently. It demonstrated that leniency programs work, that even founding conspirators will betray their partners when the financial incentive is strong enough. It proved that fighting the Commission in court, as Scania learned at extraordinary cost, rarely changes the outcome. And it established that companies controlling essential infrastructure, the vehicles that physically move everything a continent of 500 million people needs to function, are not beyond the reach of accountability. Next time you see a delivery truck merging onto the highway, think about this. Part of what that truck cost traces back to a handshake in a Brussels hotel in 1997, before most of us even had email. 6 companies decided that competition was too inconvenient to bother with. For 14 years, millions of buyers across an entire continent paid the price without ever knowing it, and the bills from that betrayal are still coming due.